For more on this story, we're now joined by legal expert Mpumelelo Zikalala, and he joins us now via our video link. Mpumelelo, thank you so much for your time. I mean, a very concerning accident that we saw yesterday in KwaZulu-Natal, and one would say that it immediately raises a lot of issues. And of course, right now, what isn't being discussed is the issue around, who should be held liable when it comes to an accident of this nature, particularly the fact that it is a public transport.
Definitely. Good evening to you, and also good evening to your viewers. I think it calls upon for the legislation to be changed, because you can feel from what especially the MEC was saying to say that there is harsher sentences that needs to be there. But unfortunately, we do not have the legal framework that will allow us to have that. If you say you're charging a person for murder, one of the elements that needs to be proved is the element of intention. And it then makes the whole murder charge which is placed against them something which is deemed to fail. Culpable homicide is much better, because in that way you say that you didn't have the intention to kill this particular individual. However, due to your negligent behavior and vicarious liability can then be extended to the owner to say, you as the owner have got the responsibility to register this vehicle, make sure that it is maintained in a proper manner. The driver's responsibility is to drive it in a manner in which it's supposed to be driven in South African roads. If there's something that happens and someone gets hurt within that particular process, you and the driver must be both arrested, so that we're able to send a very strong message to owners of public transport vehicles to say, make sure that your vehicles are in order.
And currently, what are the laws when it comes to the ownership of, a public transport of this nature, and particularly when it comes to the drivers as well?
Maybe let's start with the owners. It's more specifically looking at what is required in order for you to own that particular vehicle and is able to operate in a public arena. By public arena, meaning that it can ferry public individuals. But it is less concentrated on the punishment which is then given to you if your vehicle becomes or is in an accident. Then the liability shifts to the driver of the vehicle to say, when you are being taught how to drive, you were given specific instructions as to what things need to be there. That 10-point check that you do before you enter the vehicle, the checking of the tires, whether everything is working in order, is one of the responsibilities which are then given to the driver. That means if there's an accident that takes place, then the attention moves to the driver rather than the owner, which is something I think needs to change when it comes to the manner in which we're dealing with things, so that we're able to curb these accidents from taking place, so that we place responsibility on both the driver and also on the vehicle owner. So that at the end of the day, if there's an accident, punish them both, so that there'll be a much better attention to say, how do we make sure that we're able to protect the people that we ferry on a daily basis. Then attention must also go to the associations which are responsible when people are boarding these public transport vehicles, to say, as a rank manager, do not let a vehicle go out if the 10-point check system has not taken place, if those prerequisites of saying, do you have a PDP as a driver, have not been checked, so that you're able to protect the very same customers that you are serving on a daily basis. So it's a responsibility that does not only go to the driver, not only does it go to the owner, a number of other individuals and stakeholders must also come on board.
What further role can associations play? I mean, you are mentioning that, they can check the vehicle before it leaves, maybe, a taxi rank or maybe a bus station. But what further role can they play in ensuring that, these vehicles are safe for passengers?
Well, it's the setting of the rules before you can even be part of the business of ferrying public, of being in a public space, to say, as part of your license or the conditions which are going to be there, these are the type of standards in which we then require from you as the owner. These are the type of standard that we require from you as the driver. And also continuous skills training, which is going to be there to say, well, there's always things which are happening in our roads. Let's make sure that you are up to date and you are well trained on a regular basis as a driver, and also as an owner, you are informed of what is required, so that you are able to meet with the conditions or the tough road conditions that you are faced with. Concentration of those could then be focused, for example, during festive season or during the weekends or during long weekends, because that's when you see a number of people on the roads, users are going to increase when people are going home for various reasons. So if you then increase the concentration on that one, then you can be able to fight or reduce the number of accidents that we have along our roads if you purely concentrate on certain things.
Can this also be applied perhaps to the e-hailing services that we see, because they are also public transport?
It must be done. And when you talk about e-hailing services, there's a deficit of our legislation not moving forward fast enough in order to take care of it. For example, there's only a special dispensation that has taken place when it comes to e-hailing services. There's no specific legislation that takes care of it, which is why you would find them once in a while complaining and saying that we are not being catered for. There's no legislation that caters for such. It's just a special dispensation that has been put in place to make sure that up until proper legislation has been constituted or promulgated by our parliamentarians, then they can be able to be catered for. But it then moves back to say, the number one individual that should be protected in this case is us as members of the public. And by the way, we are the providers of the business. If there are no members of the public, the business is not there. So it's up to the owners of either e-hailing and also public transport to say, how do we make sure that we protect our customers? Let's make our customers kings and queens and make sure that we protect their safety at all times by putting these measures which are going to be voluntary. We're going to self-regulate ourselves, because at the end of the day, we do not need government in order to save lives, but it's us as the users and us as the owners of the public transport business that needs to make sure that it is able to continue for a long time.
And let's go back to the accident itself, Mpumelelo, and one would say that, we're told that they had no permit. They also had a certificate of unroadworthiness. It seems as if, some of the boxes were ticked, but at the same time, it was quite clear that that vehicle did not look like it was roadworthy. Does this also speak to problems around corruption in the system?
Yeah, definitely. If you look at who authorizes the certificate of roadworthiness, I think they should be checked themselves to say, do you even know what you're doing when you're checking for such vehicles? What did you look at? Is there an element of bribery that took place or any elements of corruption? If that's the case, then a very important and valuable lesson must be taught to say, this is why we punish individuals. This is why the certificates are important. This is why they should be done in a proper manner, because if you don't do them in that manner, and you simply accept a few hundred rands in order for it to pass, there are lives which are going to be lost. And let us look at the amounts of children that don't have parents and other relatives that are now left without their loved ones. So it's important that a thorough investigation in this case, it mustn't only end with what caused the accident and punishing of the driver and the owner. It must extend to even the person that issued that roadworthy certificates in order to teach them a lesson. And all the others that are in that position to say, if you engage in such a thing, this is the type of punishment which is going to follow you, but most importantly, you are playing with people's lives.
All right, Mpumelelo, thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure talking to you here on the Late Edition. That is Mpumelelo Zikalala. He is a legal expert, just talking to us there about, the rules of the road when it comes to the issues around unroadworthy vehicles, and at the same time, who should be held liable for such accidents, particularly when it comes to public transport. Of course, also they're highlighting the issue around some of the accidents that took place over the weekend, almost 20 people losing their lives between KwaZulu-Natal as well as in the Eastern Cape.